The computer, an extension of the human intellect.
Shall we play a game?
It's the Miscellaneous Podcast.
I'd like to go against you and see what you're made of. I'm gonna have to put you on the game, Brett.
Games? You want games? I'll give you games.
Your hosts, Polly.
You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
You are not prepared.
I'll rip the secrets from your flesh.
And Josh.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Show me your moves.
I ought to break a broom handle off in your ass.
Naughty secrets.
Hail to the king, baby. Damn, I'm good.
With a title that says it all.
Strange game. The only winning move is not to play.
Let's get to it. This episode, we're going to talk about video games. Our generation, Generation X, has witnessed the advancements in video game technology. And the interesting thing to me is, from Mario to Modern Warfare, these great games are built over 40-year-old templates.
Well, yeah, I knew that, basically today's technology, they're just, using old technology and making it look new.
Let's start with the father of video games, Ralph Baer. Now, in the early 1950s, he was creating and writing down on pieces of paper ideas for video games and concepting them. In 1966, at a bus stop, he actually creates Pong, or he calls it tennis. Now, there were video games already out around this time, but they're all government-based for ballistic trajectory, code breaking, that kind of things. Then in 1968, Baer comes out with a thing called Brown Box. It was the first video game console. Magnavox catch wind of this and signs him up, and they create a better version of this, and it's called Odyssey. It came out in 1972, held 12 games, including his tennis.
I didn't know that Odyssey was the original.
Also in 1972, a company was created by a guy named Nolan Bushnell. It's called Atari. Atari is a word that comes from a Japanese board game called Go. And whenever you're getting ready to finish off your opponent, you say the word Atari, giving the opponent the heads up that you're coming for them.
You know what? I actually was thinking to myself while you were saying this, I said, I'll bet you Atari means kill your opponent.
In 1975, found in the sporting goods section, Atari comes out with their version of the video game console called Pong. It becomes the most successful console sold at that time.
Yeah, because that's a good spot for video games.
Yeah. So then after that, Atari blows up.
Oh yeah, Atari was huge. I had a cousin who had the 2600, and then the one that came after it, I don't remember which one that one was, but he had the one that came after the 2600, which was the original.
The yard sale Pong machines, the P-O-N-G Pong, where it just had it was like table tennis electronically, where they had the 50 variations of Pong, and it's just yeah, this is lame, but it was cool at the time.
And of course, when Pong came out, Magnavox sued Atari for stealing their game, and in 1976 they came to a $400,000 settlement, which is funny because it's like a drop in the bucket, because at that time Atari was making millions.
Wow.
At 32 years old, Nolan Bushnell sells Atari in 1976 to Warner Company for $28 million.
Wow.
Yeah. This documentary I watched, he talked about how he didn't know what to do with himself because that's more money in the entire world than that he could even concept at the time.
Well, yeah, $28 million. That's in what was it, 1970 what?
1976.
Yeah, 1976, $28 million, more money than you could spend in 3 lifetimes.
Yeah.
A Pontiac car in 1977 cost $4,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's only a couple thousand.
Fun fact, did you know that Nolan Bushnell was the creator of Chuck E. Cheese?
No way.
Yes, sir.
That is cool. I liked that. Now everybody else wants in the action. 1978, Taito, it's a Japanese company. They came out with, do you know what game they came out with?
Donkey Kong.
No. They came out with Space Invaders. 1978.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, it was so successful in Japan that at one point it caused a yen shortage.
Holy crap!
I know. And then Atari had to come back and smash that one. And guess what they came out with in 1979 and 1980?
Centipede.
Yes. In 1980...
I am ruler of everything.
They came out with this thing called Vector Graphics. And in 1979, they came out with Asteroids.
Oh, Asteroids. How we spent so much time on you.
Asteroids is still a top seller to this day for retro
Really?
gaming. Yep.
I would have thought Donkey Kong. I really thought that Donkey Kong would probably have killed that one. Oh, you know what? What's interesting is that the Intellivision, not many people know about it, but the Intellivision was a home video system that was made by Mattel in 1979, and they were trying to take down or even build off the reputation of Atari.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a really weird setup that they had. The controllers were like a number pad, and you slid these little plastic sheaths over the controller, and it showed you. It was basically a number pad that had different controllers on it. Nifty, sir.
It is.
Do you remember ColecoVision?
Yes.
Okay, ColecoVision came out in 1982, and it was a direct competitor with Mattel's Intellivision, but wound up directly competing. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the Atari 5200, because remember where I talked about whatever came after the 2600?
Mm-hmm.
That was the 5200. It was a video console that was introduced in 1982 as a replacement for the Atari 2600, and it competed with Mattel's Intellivision, but Intellivision, died off because it only sold like 1.5 million games, and then but it actually winded up competing more with ColecoVision, who their best-selling game was Donkey Kong.
Over the next several years, the Atari programmers were hating life, so either they quit or got fired, and they started their own company called Activision.
Oh, I remember Activision.
Yep, and their big game was Pitfall. We all love Pitfall.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Parents of the politicians, there's becoming a backlash for the arcades. They are saying that it's corrupting the youth.
So I grew up with the Atari, and before that, it was always you had to go somewhere to play video games.
You're skipping school to go to the arcades. Seedy kids who smoke cigarettes and drink beer when they're 13 go to arcade games. You know what I mean?
I skipped school to go play arcade games.
There you go. You were the guy in the corner with the 50s leather on and, combed your hair all back and smoked Lucky Strikes.
That's right. I had my collar popped up because that was cool then.
Oh, you mean with your Izod shirt on?
That's right. My Izod shirt and my members only jacket. Yeah.
So in 1977, Atari combats this with the first ever successful home console. Better than Odyssey, better than whatever was around there. And it was Atari. The wood-paneled one, the cartridge you could stick in, came with your joystick, came with all this other stuff. Now here's a fun thing, okay? How much was the Atari back then to buy?
I'm gonna say new back then. I would say like $110.
Close. $199.
I was gonna say $200.
Yeah.
That's like $500 today.
Yeah, that's $790 in today's money.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and they bought them. Kids got
That's so shocking I had to whisper it.
In 1983, there was a video game crash in the market. $250 million went down south because of all the stuff flooding the market. Then Atari tries smashing down the competition, so they start blending in movies that are coming out with Atari games. And the biggest one thing is E.T. And E.T.'s video game was so shitty.
Oh, it's horrible. I remember it.
Yep. That it was bad.
E.T. was only a shitty game. I beat it, which is what I sent him home.
In 1984, Warner sold Atari, and they even said that American computer games is no longer, it's dead. But then another evolution begins from there. In Japan, Nintendo was already around. It's actually an old ancient card game. I don't know if you knew that or not. And there was a
Yeah, I
gentleman
knew the
there.
name was based off of the card game.
And a guy who worked there was a visionary. He was eccentric, artistic guy named Shigeru Miyamoto. I'm butchering the name.
He was the creator of Pac-Man.
No, he was not. Shigeru Miyamoto is the sole creator of the Mario Brothers franchise.
Do you know what Mario's original name was? Jumpman.
Yes! Miyamoto was a very creative artist, but never was into gaming. He hated, actually, technology. He didn't trust computers or electricity. So
Electricity?
Yeah. Alright, so in 1980, they give Miyamoto the project of making a new game. In the 70s, Nintendo actually was converted from a card company into a video game company. And they came out with a game called Radar Scope. Now, it did okay in Japan, but when it went to America, it bombed. So he was tasked to create a new game to replace that one. And he didn't know what he was doing. He had no clue. So he did his research. He went to arcades. He went to houses and seen how the kids play. Did what he could to find out everything he could about that subject since he didn't know anything about it. And there was no real new big thing to come out with, programming-wise. All the templates have been made. So Miyamoto decided to write a story. He wanted to watch a movie through a video game. And that game he created was Donkey Kong.
Yes.
In the making of Donkey Kong, the original Mario, or Jumpman, he didn't have a hat. He had long locks of flowing hair. But there was no computer programming to show the locks of flowing when you jump up and down or run. So to fix that, they put a red hat on him.
Do you know how Mario actually got his name?
No.
It's weird because like when Nintendo was creating Donkey Kong and his name was Jumpman, they were like, Jumpman is a stupid name, so we need to create like a real name for him. The owner, the building that Nintendo was in, they were behind on their rent. And so they offered if they named a character after the landlord, and his name was Mario something, and that's how he got the name Super Mario.
That is so awesome.
They also gave him a mustache because they didn't have a way to make a mouth.
Huh, that's cool as shit. I didn't know that part. Donkey Kong made over $1 million the first year it came out.
Oh my.
In 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System came out. And when it launched, Jumpman became Mario. You just told us that story. That's awesome. How much do you think the original Nintendo system cost?
I'm almost certain I'm not going to say certain. I'm going to guess because we got one like the year after it came out, and I think my mom and dad paid like $300 for it.
Correct. $299 before taxes.
There you go.
Now,
I win.
You're the one who first told me this. There's a red-colored one. I never knew that.
Yep, there was a red-colored one.
Do you know what that one was made for?
Bloodshed and Carnage?
Yes. It was for the PC.
Oh, the Super Mario Brothers, yeah.
So it discontinued in 1995, and by then, over 61 million units were sold. So they made their...
Did you also know that Super Mario Brothers was the very first game that Nintendo had? And that game was actually designed to be the final cartridge game for any playing system because Nintendo was convinced that cartridge systems were dead, that PC games were the way of the future, and so they weren't going to make any other games other than Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, and they ended up doing it for 11 more years.
Wow.
Contra was obviously a classic. See, I had an older brother, so we beat the crap out of each other, and mostly Nintendo type stuff, and then when Sega come out, Killer Instinct and the old, with the combo that you accidentally hit and think you were good, and then all the friends with NBA Jam come out, and we would all get together and have a little NBA Jam tournament.
What's up a brick?
Oh yeah,
and like the ball would catch on
he's
fire.
On fire.
Yeah, you burn the net and stuff.
We had a code. You could be like Bill Clinton. We had a big old head.
You gotta be kidding me.
Oh, it was
know
awesome.
that.
Yeah, and then before that, Tecmo Bowl for Nintendo.
Yes.
We'd get down tournaments with that too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always cool. You get Bo Jackson, just mash B button and just never get tackled, or run backwards to the end zone and throw the ball 100 yards and it was always caught. Little tricks like that. So it wasn't like a lot of sports games and fighting games where like Mario was cool, but you couldn't save. So you play it. You leave it on, you go to school, You come back, you try to finish it until we figured out the turtle where you get 100,000 free lives.
Huh? Oh yeah,
Mario,
you like keep rolling
on the stairs. Yeah, if you hit it right, numbers run out, and you start to get like stars and all that just because you have unlimited lives.
Oh wow!
So that was easy once you got that, because you could beat it. But before that, beating on 3 men was hard. And then my mom would steal my Nintendo and wouldn't see it for a couple of days.
By 1987, the icon character Mario was more recognized by children than Mickey Mouse.
Oh wow!
Isn't that crazy? Another game came out around that time, and we all know and love it. It's called Zelda. Zelda was...
it's weird. I wasn't much of a Zelda player. I mean, I played it, but I was like, eh.
Neither was I. I played earlier Zeldas every once in a while. I played later Zeldas a lot more. Super Smash Brothers, Link, gotta love it. Mario Brothers, Zelda, they're all creations from Miyamoto. From the character studies, the characters, the artwork, to the soundtrack, that's all him. Zelda's world was from his childhood. He would take long walks in the forest and the mountain areas, and his mind would create these awesome adventures with different things, and that's how you got Zelda.
Wow. I also know that on Super Mario Brothers, I know a lot about this stupid game. The castles, the small castle and the large castle are actually the same thing. A large castle is just several of the small castles stacked on top of each other.
Oh, yeah?
And the clouds and the bushes are actually the same thing. It's just that clouds are white and bushes are green.
Huh.
They also redid sound effects in Super Mario Brothers, because when you went down a tube, or if you got like hit and you went from a large Mario to a small Mario, those are the same sounds. I know too much about Super Mario Brothers, dude.
So important fact, Super Mario Bros. 1, Mario, from start to finish, all 9 levels, including the bonus without the warp, 3.7 miles.
Wait, that's how far he runs?
That's how far he runs. If you assume that he's the average sized person, and his steps are about 26 inches, he runs 3.7 miles to save just each.
And always Koopa fucking steals her, man. What do you think he does to her, man? He probably does.
Koopa?
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Right, you know.
He's like, look at my horny shell.
50 Shades Darker is probably based off of King Koopa, dude.
By the end of the 80s, Nintendo sold over 30 million consoles and over 100 million video games, and held 89% of the world's gaming market.
Wow, 89%.
Now this was a very interesting story. Let's backtrack 4 years. In 1984, a game was created in Russia by Alex Pajitnov. Okay, in Russia, a game was created by a guy in 1984.
By a guy named Alex.
Yeah, that originally was called Pentamenos. And it was called Tetris.
Yep, I knew that.
Yep.
Tetris is Russian.
Yeah. And the difference between the Tetris and the Pentamenos game is Tetris uses 4 block pieces versus 5 block pieces. And that was to accentuate more the game, to easier fit the puzzle making skill of it for the average player, but also create, when it starts speeding up, more intensity.
Yeah, it's challenging, but not enough for, the dumb people.
Tetris is actually a Greek word called tetra.
Meaning 5. No, I don't know what it means.
Meaning 4. You were close. There was 3 different people who wanted the licensing rights to that game. The main guy from Nintendo, I forgot his name. 2 others that I don't really remember. The point of this story is that the guy who created Tetris was under KGB surveillance at all times. And also, during the licensing right meetings, he's there with KGB agents in the room who were negotiating for him.
Oh, jeez.
By the time the negotiating was done, the other 2 people wanted to hurt the guy who won, which makes sense because of all all that shit they had to go through. So what the guy did was, the guy who worked for Nintendo took out the guy who created it to the only Japanese hibachi grill place. And they celebrated their victory over a nice feast that was surrounded by KGB.
God, nothing like a bunch of Russians going to a Japanese food restaurant.
In 1989, they come out with the way better handheld games. They come out with Game Boy. But there's more. In 1996, they came out with something that wasn't Mario, wasn't Tetris, wasn't Zelda, wasn't Donkey Kong, etc., etc. For the Game Boy, it was, do you know what game it was?
Dr. Mario.
No, Pokemon.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize Pokemon came out on Game Boy first. I never had a Game Boy. Did you?
I didn't, but I played a lot of them.
I took them from a lot of the weaker children.
Yeah, didn't you?
No, I didn't. At that point, I had moved on to something else, I guess.
So now, what is the next step? We already have the building blocks, the templates. That technology is not going to change. That's how we play our games. Our first person, third person, or scrollers. And so what had happened was game creators, they went all around. They started doing surveys on people. Do we tell the story? Mario did really good. All those Zeldas, all that stuff. They found out through this game called BC. BC is just a general survivor game. People cared about the old people who were sitting on rocks more than the other stuff. So gamers, game creators figured they were onto something.
When you and I were growing up, Paul, the games weren't as intriguing as they are now.
Yeah.
Now they're so intriguing, every little button you hit or every choice you make can outcome the game.
Yeah. True. That's true. Definitely. I would say that the video game actually babysitted me a lot of times. Like, I didn't have no babysitter at 8 or 9, 10, 11 years old. Right. Video game was my babysitter.
We'll take his experience and encounter this when he was playing Left 4 Dead. How many times when you were playing Left 4 Dead did you decide, okay, I'm not going to I don't need that first aid kit. I'll make it to the end. How many times did you not make it to the end? For every choice is an outcome.
Exactly.
That's the way a lot of these games are going now, especially your RPGs, survivals, everything like that. Any choice you make can outcome the end of the game.
So the race of bigger and better started happening. For PC in 1994, Myst came out. Great puzzle game, phenomenal graphics for the time. 1995, Sims games comes out. Tomb Raider, 1996, phenomenal game. 1996, you have the Pokemon, which we talked about earlier. You also have Quake, which pushed the boundaries for future first-person shooters. In 1996, the biggest one came out as well. The storyline, what we talked about earlier, now mix it with all the badass stuff, Resident Evil. Nothing says anything better like an evil survivor horror video game. 1997, Gran Turismo from Sony comes out, and it just totally changes racing games. 1997, GoldenEye 007 comes out, and that was the very first really successful 4 split-screen deathmatch. 1998, Blizzard with StarCraft. That brought a more improved version to the Command & Conquer games. In 1999, first-person shooters technology soared with Unreal Tournament and Quake 3. The gameplay was so fast.
Yeah, I prefer first-person because I love the snipe. My favorite was Medal of Honor European Assault. That was my favorite. That was PlayStation 2. Medal of Honor, Frontlines, then there was Rising Sun, then European Assault.
What was the one where it was Pearl Harbor and everything, wasn't it?
Rising Sun.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah. That was actually, me and Michael co-opted the hell out of that game. And we always had like a little moment of silence when they said, God bless Arizona.
In 2004, World of Warcraft rewrote MMOs.
I'd say I first started playing World of Warcraft when me and Joe first got together. His buddy Josh would play it, and I just found it so cool.
2005, Guitar Hero. It was a new innovation which sparked a cultural phenomenon, opening the door to more real-life interaction.
The games they got now are just way too involved with your physicalness. I watch my son play video games. And you got to remember, I came from a time when originally it was a stick and a button, to you had 2 buttons and a controller piece, to now, there's 80 buttons on the damn controller. People get so immersed in games now. You have to be.
And I know I'm glossing over a lot of different games too, and also the consoles. I'm not mentioning those either, from the progression from the NES all the way to Xbox.
Playing and just starting off on the older consoles, you don't notice the graphics until you go back 10 years later, and then you realize these graphics suck because they're constantly improving.
Do you know, I was actually a nationally ranked Unreal Tournament player. I could play at 300%.
Damn, son.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I know somebody famous. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, I was just famous at Unreal Tournament.
I always loved the Gatling gun in that. I always went to try to the rail gun.
Yep, I was a grenade thrower. I was dynamite at throwing shit at people.
Yep. A lot of those games are becoming pretty violent.
Yeah, there were a lot of first-person shooters and Grand Theft Autos. Yeah.
And it was causing a rift, actually.
Well, I remember there was a lot of people who were, America's children are getting more and more violent because of these violent games. And, I don't think that any kind of responsible parenting will let their kids believe that, getting out of a car and kicking a hooker until she gives you money is a responsible way to go about life.
As the evolution went on, you start to see blood.
Games nowadays like Saints Row, Grand Theft Auto especially, where you could just, take a baseball bat to the hooker or kill about 100 cops in like an hour, compared to like what we played, like Mortal Kombat.
Exactly.
Yeah, they call it the Mortal Kombat versus Mortal Kombat, and then the government stepped in. But the good thing is they pretty much gave it right back to the gaming companies and said, hey, look, create your own rating scales. And they came up with the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB. And that's when you see the bottom box and it says T for teen, G for gore, V for violence, all that stuff.
Did you just breadcrumb me into that?
I did. How'd you like that?
It was okay. I didn't feel like I was being led down a chute.
And to make games nowadays is not an easy task. Because you got all that crap now to do. There's no room for mistakes. Do you know what the average cost to make a game is?
How much does a new game cost to make?
Yeah, just on average, not counting frills and whistles and shit.
87 cents.
You're that guy on fucking The Price is Right who does the dollar, aren't you?
$1.
$10 million to create a video game nowadays.
I was way off. I was thinking like 50.
Yeah. But still, 10 million's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And with that price, you keep getting better and better graphics, better storylines, and but onwards and upwards. I love technology, and that's how I'm going to end this. One more thing. What do you think the future holds for video games? What do you think is the next phase?
I think the next evolution is going to be 3D. Everyone's, getting the VR headsets with the Samsungs and does Apple have one? I don't know.
No.
I know Samsung has the virtual reality headsets, and those are getting huge. And now they're talking about 4D, which is, interacting with the 3D environment, but within the goggles, they're going to actually have smells. And yeah, I've read a little bit about it, and it's kind of in its infant stages. Like, you can buy like these little canisters of smells, and like they will kind of like not like mist at you, but give you a little puff of a smell. And so it sounds so gross.
Well, no, they do that in theaters. They'll hit the bottom of the seat or pipe in smells in the air. That technology is not really new, though. Even the VR technology is not new. You remember when we were kiddos, VR came out like in the late 80s. But it was so expensive and high tech to do it. Remember, it was that huge helmet you had to put on? You had to put the gloves on and wires everywhere. And you stood in that little ringed box. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
And all you could see is this shitty fucking graphic of a bird flying, and you could put your hands up and try to grab at it. But it was cool for the time.
Yeah, but the way technology is advancing now is that VR technology is getting very, very good. And surprisingly, I don't know if the viewers are going to agree with it, but porn is on the cutting edge of this.
You're not the only one. Well, hell, porn is everywhere. I mean, when they were talking about the first flights into space by private, companies, it's going to be filmed with porn.
Yeah. The weird thing is that I told you the smell technology is actually from the porn industry. Yeah. I don't want to go into what kinds of smells you can get with your VR headset and watch virtual reality porn with, but let's just say they're less than savory.
Oh.
I mean, it's not like, armpit or anything like that. It's like, but there are smells that you should not get wafted at you while you're watching a porn. It's awful. It's terrible. Now, here's the thing. I don't have one, just so we know that. I don't have one, but I have Googleized it. That's
I don't know. I would not mind seeing virtual reality porn, but at the same time, nothing beats just having regular porn, in your own life, I guess, or something. Okay. But I do want to ask, what games do you remember when you were growing up? What were the big ones for you?
Oh, God, for me, let's see, on the Atari system, it was, Pac-Man, obviously, but I remember a game called Dodgem. It was a game, do you remember that game?
No.
Dodgem was a game where you played it was a car and you went around the screen and it had differing, they had like little dots you had to pick up like Pac-Man, but there was another car that was going the opposite direction that you were going, trying to kill you. Huh. All you had to do was run into the other car and you were dead, so you had to keep shifting in and out of lanes to stay out of its way.
Did you ever play Life Force?
No, I didn't. So let's see, the Atari was, Dodgem was by far my favorite. Then I played a couple of games on the Intellivision. There was like a racing game, and then there was actually Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I remember that because it was advanced. Yeah, it was like 4-bit graphics. It was horrible. But anyway.
Didn't they have that also on Apple IIc?
Probably. Yep, I remember Oregon Trail, obviously Chopper Rescue.
We all loved Asteroids, Centipede, Space.
You know what? I hated Asteroids. I hated the game. Yeah, I was not good at. Centipede, I was dynamite at. Space Invaders, pretty good at.
Frogger?
I was good at Frogger. I liked Frogger.
Did you ever play Combat?
I did with the tanks. I always loved the screens where you could bounce the bullets around.
Yes. And that's probably why you like Scorched Earth, isn't it?
Scorched Earth was great. You know what? I remember down the street, we had a neighbor who had a Sega. And so we would go there and play it because we didn't have a Sega. We had a Nintendo. When we would play the Sega, we would play Mortal Kombat. And I remember it was like the next generation in graphics and blah, blah, blah. It was so fun to play Mortal Kombat. And then he got a Sega CD, which was a CD-ROM that actually plugged into the existing Sega system. And whenever you had to do the fatalities, you would hear the disc spin up, and it would go whoop, and it would go zzz, zzz, to find the spot on the CD where it was, and then play the fatality. It was hilarious. Before World of Warcraft, there was a game, but everybody was into it, and it was like basically an infinite game. Like the higher you got, the more difficult the higher you got, the more difficult the dungeons or the quests or whatever. EverQuest, that's the name of it.
Thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, please subscribe.
Good or bad. If you like us, recommend a friend. If you don't like us, recommend an enemy.
We're both on iTunes and Stitcher. Give us some likes, thanks, reviews. That'd be great. We're also on YouTube. The only bad thing is you gotta put in my real name, which is Paul, P-A-U-L, and Urban, U-R-B-A-N. Then go to channels and scroll down. You'll find the Miscellaneous Podcast yellow icon. We will have a Facebook page. Right now we're using mine, which is inappropriate because I'm ugly, and on top of that I can't take off any pictures. Why is that? Why is Facebook saying I need to, anyone who's in the picture with me, I need to go ask their permission to take it off my Facebook page? Or did I miss this up? Is there a button I don't know about? We're a work in progress. On the next episode, we're going to be covering some of the secrets of St. Louis, Missouri. Come join us as we talk about the government testing, Charles Lindbergh, all the caves underneath St. Louis, and a couple other things.